Rouzbeh Parsi, please tell us what you see as happening with the current situation after the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has made these very dramatic remarks which show there's absolutely no way that he's going to back down, despite the fact that behind the scenes we hear that Steve Witkoff and the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi have been meeting and speaking to each other. And you have Donald Trump, of course, assuring the world that talks will begin next week. So, where do you see this very fragile truce? I see it more as a truce than a ceasefire. Truce leading to? Will there be a rapid kind of nuclearization, move to weaponize its nuclear weapons by Iran, or will it back down and, what's on the cards?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I would say that often I think that what we see in Iran is that the less they can do, the more they scream. So in a sense, the harsher the rhetoric, it usually covers up for inability to act or unwillingness to act. So in this case, I think what the Supreme Leader is doing is really notching up the rhetoric to a point of making it look like Iran is totally defiant because he needs that political cover. But I think, behind closed doors, they're well aware of the weaknesses that have been exposed in their system, especially when it comes to defense and security. And in that sense, I do not think that they can afford more warfare, especially not with the United States. So if you look at how they reacted to the Israeli attack, it was very clear that they were avoiding the Americans at all costs. And they only responded once the Americans themselves attacked. And even that response was very much reminiscent of the way they handled the killing of General Soleimani in Baghdad, basically by doing a symbolic counterattack, which had no American casualties, and thereby allowing Donald Trump in his first presidency to declare some kind of victory and retreat. In that way, it did not spin out of control. Because in the end, they are well aware of the fact that the United States is ill-equipped and cannot afford another war in the Middle East, but it is not of existential nature to them. But for Iran, it is of existential nature, which is that they cannot afford it at all under any circumstances.
So, there's this sort of complication that is, and contradictory statements that are coming from, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, versus the Pentagon leak, which says that the bunker busters did not actually penetrate deep enough, even though they sent 12 bunker busters, in two each into Fodro. The 2 days before that, there is satellite images of trucks in Fodro transporting material out of there, which basically implies then that the Iranians managed to sort of move their yellow cake and their near nuclearized weapons out of there to safety. Is that something which you take on board as being credible?
Well, I think if nothing else, it would have been a disastrous example of sheer and total incompetence. If once the Israelis attacked, they did not try and remove and keep safe whatever they had in terms of highly enriched uranium, which is what I think is the most prized element inside that particular facility. But either way, you can put it like this. The Iranian nuclear program is on such an industrial scale that whether Fordo was destroyed or not is almost besides the point. And this is something the Pentagon had known for 20 years, which is that even if they managed to destroy the program, the whole program, in whatever shape, sense, or form, Iran will be able to rebuild it within 2 to 3 years. So in that sense, just like Daniel Levy was saying, the idea of a military solution is at best a tactical victory. It is not a strategic solution to the problem. That will require either a land invasion, which no one can afford or want to, or a political solution through negotiations.
So you're basically saying that this Trump's claim of obliteration may, or whether it's true or not, Iran will still have the capability to weaponize its nuclear weapons. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I think sometimes in the media and the politics of all of this, I've been following this since 2009. There is an over interest or focus on the technical aspects. In the end, it's not about how much they've enriched. It's about whether they've taken a political decision to do
Yes.
something with what they have enriched. And in
Mm.
that sense, the irony is that the Supreme Leader probably has been the most important element against a weaponization of their enriched uranium, at least up until now, because they have refused to cross this threshold. They want to be on the threshold, but they have refused to cross it. Now, in the best of worlds, if you have good allies and if you have friends, and if you're relatively popular in the Western world primarily, you can get away with having the cake and eat it. And that's what Israel has been doing for many decades, since they have nuclear weapons, but no one is criticizing them in any serious way for that. Iran has hoped to be in that position, but Iran does not have any friends. It does not have an air defense. So in many ways, they are in the worst of two worlds. Everyone suspects them of wanting one, a nuclear
Mm.
weaponized program, but they don't have it to deter anyone with yet. And so in that sense, what Netanyahu might have done is to accelerate something that he himself has claimed for many years to want to prevent, which is a weaponized Iranian state.
So do you think that Iran went too far, and has paid a price for its head-on confrontation with, with Israel? I mean,
Absolutely.
do you think it went too far? It just bitten off more than it can chew?
Well, in the sense that the Iranians often have been mistaken for being strategic when they have primarily been opportunistic. But
Mm.
if you are going to get yourself into a fight with a country like Israel, which is by far militarily superior to you, and as I said, has more allies than Iran even has enemies, you have to know what you're doing. So in that sense, you can say that what they have now shown is for all the vaunted security, etc., which they've primarily spent on repressing human rights activists inside Iran, they had no clue how much the Israeli intelligence had penetrated Iranian
Yes.
defenses and security establishments. So in that way, they showed themselves to be quite incompetent. The second aspect is that deterrence through missiles only works if you also have air defense to keep those missiles safe. So for now, they managed to hold their own against Israel. But if the Americans had gone in more, full-heartedly than Trump was willing to do, then I think after, say, a month of American bombardment, there would be nothing left of the missile program to deter anyone with. And by definition, having the Americans attack you in a real war shows that the deterrence is no longer there.
There's also a feeling that, unlike the pliant Lebanon or, other countries in the region, this is Tehran. It's vocal, it's got a people's movement for change that bubbles under the surface. It's the theocracy and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps are very powerful. But as we all know, I mean, if they found them and they killed the top brass, they must have been penetrated quite deeply by Mossad. But what's on the cards within Iran? Do you see a political transformation? I mean, is there a kind of a reordering? Because there doesn't seem to be, a unified, a unitary, a kind of voice from Ali Khamenei and from the President Pezeshkian.
Well, I mean, I
Is there a
think
rift?
I think the first thing that we need to keep in mind is that the Islamic Republic is extremely unpopular among the population.
Mm.
So it is not a system that has the support of the majority of the population. However, what the Israelis underestimated, and I think maybe they were listening too much to some of the exiled opposition groups, is to mistake Iranian willingness to get rid of their own political system with being willing to accept Israeli military force that kills civilians and destroys societal institutions in the country to do so. And in that, they underestimated Iranian nationalism. And I think what they didn't understand is that Iranian nationalism that now has been triggered is a sentiment that has nothing to do with the Islamic Republic as such. It has to do with the country and its territory. So the rallying around the flag, for now at least, is around the flag of Iran rather than the flag of the Islamic Republic. And that is not going to help the Israelis to implode or explode this regime.
And also impose a fresh regime. on Iran, that will be totally unacceptable, including
Yes.
even if it is the crown prince being brought
I,
back.
I think he shot himself not only in the foot but in the face with his inability to criticize the Israeli attacks on Iran. And he got a lot of pushback, not just from people who are generally against the monarchy, but from a lot of monarchists. Because monarchism, in its, if you will, traditional historical form in Iran, is very much tied to Iranian nationalism. So some of his most vocal critics are actually people who used to work for his father, the last
Oh
Shah,
my gosh.
in saying that he has betrayed his country by allying himself with a foreign country to attack his homeland.
I have one last question. You know, the word that you use, the nuclear threshold, that is something that has been part and parcel of these rounds of talks that have been taking place between the US and Iran. Is that something that the Iranians would give up? In the sense, would they be willing to give up their nuclear weaponization altogether? Is that a prospect, or is it just
Well,
a
for
thought?
now, as far as we know from the IAEA and from the American, joint intelligence assessment that came out just in March this year, they have not decided to weaponize. And I think the element that they would not be willing to give up is the enrichment program, because it gives them all the independence in terms of producing nuclear fuel, but also the knowledge needed to weaponize if things get really bad. So I think that is a red line, and that was a red line that the Americans were respecting in the first rounds of their negotiations when Witkoff met Araghchi, and that's why many of us were quite optimistic that they could reach a deal. Then Witkoff went home and in the White House turned 180 degrees and demanded zero enrichment. And that's when things started to go haywire.
I see. Any concluding remarks, Dr. Rouzbeh Parsi?
No, I think the only thing I would add is that both what's happening in Gaza and the reactions from some of the countries in Europe to what the war with Iran, what it does is that it undermines even more international law, which is one of the few things. It's a straw, but it's a straw that is necessary to cling on to if we're going to have any kind of order that defends everyone, irrespective of whether they're popular or not. And I think the Europeans in this regard has really failed.
So you're basically saying that there could be pressure on Israel to find a settlement with the Palestinians on Gaza,
Well, that would be the hope, but I don't think that pressure is going to come from the US or the Europeans.
because that would then give the Arab world, the chance to unite and work unitedly against, the genocide that is going on in Gaza.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much,
Thank
Professor
you.
Parsi, for coming on
My
the
pleasure.
show.
Thank you.
Thank you.